Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. My name is Stephan Hocks. I'm a refugee lawyer from Frankfurt. And as a refugee lawyer, you have to specialize in particular country of origins with respect to your clients. So my countries are Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Afghanistan. That is necessary that you have a little inspection to that what is going on in those countries if you want to give advice to people who are wanting to establish their reasons for being persecuted. So my name is Stephan Hocks. I'm coming from Frankfurt, and there is something else I would like to introduce. That is the Refugee Law Clinic. We have in Gießen a Refugee Law Clinic, which is a students training program. Students are allowed to give legal advice under supervision of professionals. No, thank you. Okay, thank you. And that is happening in Gießen. I'm very proud of being part of this program. So that brings me to another point. You come from several universities in Germany, and we have similar programs in. Es läuft doch. Okay, sorry. It's better now? Much better? Oh, nice to hear that. Okay. Our topic today is legal issues relating to hosting a threatened scholar in Germany. And I would like to, in the beginning, point out that I'm using two different colors. You see the word threatened is red and scholars is in a green frame. That has its meaning. You will see very soon. Being hosted in Germany. So this is our topic. The first problem I would like to address is being in Germany. Yeah, that could mean two things. It could mean that somebody is already staying and residing in Germany. It could also be the question that somebody is staying outside of Europe and is wanting and intending to come to Germany. This makes a huge difference because we have, under the German immigration law, a distinction between, or the requirement of visa. There's a very strict visa regime. The entry to Germany requires a visa if you're not coming from Japan or Australia, the United States, and other Western countries, industrial countries, which are exempt from this visa scenario. So you have to get a visa before you come to Germany. And secondly, the visa regime has a second implication. You have to provide the correct and the right visa if you want to have a longer perspective residence. For instance, you come as a tourist and you want to shift over to be a researcher. That is not possible. It is maybe possible, but it's very, very difficult. And for those people who are coming from Japan or New Zealand, all these countries exempted, for them it's not a problem to change their purpose. But for other people it is very difficult, if not excluded. So these are the two questions we have to bear in mind. So coming now to the point of threatened scholars. And now you see why I'm using two different colors. There are two ways of establishing a residence as a threatened scholar. The red color is referring to all the reasons which are an obstacle for some person to return. That is the right to remain due to political or religious or gender-related persecution, or the persecution in the connection of sexual orientation. All these reasons are reasons why you cannot return. That is not the reason why you have to be in Germany especially, but this is a reason why you can't return to your country of origin. There's another thing, that is the threat of torture or the risk of a death in the course of an internal conflict, an armed conflict as we have in Syria, for instance. So all these reasons amount later on to a right to stay. I will go deeper into that later. Then we have the green side. The green side is offering a bundle of reasons for people to be in Germany because of their qualification or their research intention or qualification or their research as a professional. All these kind of reasons I will also inspect later. But in common they have both lead or may lead to a right to stay in Germany. The way as a refugee, and that is the way I'm addressing now in red, means you have in a procedure before the German Bundesamt für Migration und Flüchtlinge, which is the German Federal Office for Migration and Refugees, to establish that you have genuine reasons to be here as a refugee, so that you have to establish that you are being persecuted. Just going through these reasons now, these reasons are ruled under the Geneva Convention, and there we have 5 specific reasons for persecution which are acknowledged. One of them, the political persecution, which is, I think, very clear. Religious persecution, which not only means that you are prevented from carrying out any religious ceremony, but it's also referring to you, or it's helpful to you if you want to be, you don't want to be a part of any religion, apostasy, for instance, or just denying any participants in a ceremony. If you are persecuted for this reason, then that also amounts to religious persecution. Gender-related persecution could mean the female genital mutilation. It could also mean persecution in connection with marriage rules and other things that only apply to women. And of course, we have the persecution reason, sexual orientation, which is very, very important for us, as we have many countries where homophobia is taking place. Then we have something else. Apart from the Geneva Convention refugee status, we have something else that is the subsidiary protection, which is an invention of the European Union. The European Union intended at that time, it was 2004, they intended to fill the gap. To fill the gap for people who are fleeing civil wars, for instance, with people who are not individually persecuted. For instance, people from Afghanistan who are fleeing the Taliban and the armed conflict that is taking place there, or Syria. They are not individually persecuted, but they can gain the protection as a subsidiary protected person, and that amounts to a nearly same status as the refugee status. The problem about that is, and that brings us back to our question today, how do we host them and how do we get them to Germany? It is, I have a very sad answer. There is no visa scenario for refugees. That is not a reason to go to an embassy and tell there that I'm persecuted and I need a visa. We had last year, maybe you have known about that, a case at the European Court of Justice where people from Syria wanted to get a visa under these kinds of under the European provisions, but it was denied. It was being said that there is no such visa for people who are coming up with the reason of persecution. What they do is they have to find other ways of coming there. The popular way is the illegal immigration by boat or crossing borders illegally through the Balkan states, or to use any other visa systems like family reunion or tourist visa, which is not a very working way because the embassies are very reluctant in issuing such visa because they understand that or assume that people use that only for illegal migration, and so they don't give the visa. The second point is that is the Dublin regulation, which is a European regulation that decides on where someone who comes illegally to Germany or to Europe has in effect his or her asylum procedure. So if you come illegally through Italy, you have to return to Italy and you will face your asylum procedure there, or you have a visa as a tourist issued by the embassy of France, then you have to go to France and face there your asylum procedure. So you are not free as an asylum seeker choose the country where you have your asylum process. Secondly, or thirdly, we have the problem that the person in question has to go through a procedure, and as the before mentioned Federal Office of Migration and Refugees has to evaluate whether you are persecuted or not, or whether you are facing the threat of torture or the risk of danger and death caused by an internal armed conflict. So you have to establish the reasons there, and in the course of this procedure there will be an interview in which you have to explain your situation. And very important, that is something what I would like to point out, is all the questions coming with that are not retrospectively asked. So it's not the question what happened before you came. The only question is, do you fear deportation? Do you fear persecution or not? This is the question in an asylum procedure, or other kinds of torture and other. Yeah, the asylum procedure has now, if we look to that, offers to people the right and the possibility to do research. So you can, once you come through the track as an asylum seeker, you can work, you can do research, you can study, and there are at the moment no limitations of free movement. So that was true in the past, but it was abolished 2 years ago in the end of 2016. You may, as an asylum seeker, travel around Germany without limitation, and you have access to social benefits. So the studying or doing research shouldn't be a major problem. What you don't have is the choice of a residence. You can't, in the first place, decide that you want to live in Berlin or in Gießen or in Frankfurt, but you can come up with your reasons that you maybe have a admission to a university or a place, the possibility to do research somewhere. Then you can convince the authorities to allow you to move. But what it's of course not possible is the travel between the European states, so you can't travel to France or Italy and return. And what I'm saying is not true for all the people coming from so-called safe countries. So, safe countries under the German asylum law are Ghana, the Senegal, and a couple of the Western countries, Western Balkan countries like Serbia, Albania. So people from these countries are not allowed to work and are not allowed to study, and they are strictly limited in their way of moving around, and housing, of course, and also with the respect of social benefits. Yeah, this is the asylum seeker way. Now we have a way that is probably more known to you. This is the way to come as a professional, by the way of being a student or a worker doing some work in connection with a university, or as a researcher. Now we focus on the green side of the word, threatened scholars. Here we have a visa scenario. They can and may, and they have to apply for a visa to come as a student, for instance, or we have that on the green side now, or as any other person embraced by this rule. So let us go through this. We have the students, and there was a huge improvement taking place last year in 2017. A European directive was introduced to German law. Now students have a right to get a residence permit once they have been admitted by the university. There is no discretion and decision by the immigration office. Once the university has decided to take someone as a student, the discretion is limited to 0 to the immigration offices in the case of students. And I don't have to explain the way, but we imagine that some certain scholar being somewhere can go through this channel and get a student's visa and come to Germany. The next thing is, or the next point is the researcher's visa under paragraph 20 of the Residence Act that allows researchers who are admitted by an institution, by a research institution that is listed with the Bundesamt für Migration to come to Germany and do their research. And there's something what is very helpful to them. They have a time of 9 months upon finishing their research to seek for a job in Germany on the area where they worked. So that is not, the researcher's visa is not only limited to the research itself, it allows you to establish a residence for a longer term. And then, of course, there's the professionals. There are the way for professionals as blue card holders or people without blue card who simply work. The difference between blue card and paragraph 18 workers is only that blue card holders have a more comfortable situation in terms of getting unlimited stayment or family reunion, but they have to come up with a salary of at least, I guess, 147,000 euro per year to establish themselves as blue card holders. And of course, they have to claim that they have a qualification, a degree with a university that is acknowledged in Germany. And the conditions and downsides of this procedure, of course, is you have the visa, you need a visa. The visa procedure may last long. It is a problem to get the visa date with the embassy abroad. Some clients tell me that they wait for months just to get a visa session there, to get a date to see the officers at the embassy. Later change of visa is difficult, but possible. What is not possible is to get all the green statement, residence permit after an illegal immigration. That is not possible, but you may change if you come as a tourist and then you want to do the research as a 28. It might be possible if you can come up with good reasons why you can't return. In the case of a threatened scholar, it might be that these reasons lying in their home country may be the reasons why he or she can't return, and then we can get around the visa procedure in this way, and then you get that. But it's not easy, but you can go this way. You have to have a passport, which is a very important point. No passport, no residence permit. But also there are exemptions that we can talk about. You have to provide the admission of the university by the university or by the institution for that you are doing your research. That is one burden, of course. You have to secure your livelihood. That is another thing. An asylum seeker never is being asked, can you afford your life? Where are your money coming from? Because people who are persecuted in their home countries are not subject to this expectation that they can make their own life. They're here because we give them shelter and not because they can live off their own livelihood. Then there is the dependency on the residence purpose. I mean by that, once you quit your university studies, once you lose your contract with a research institution, then of course there will be the danger that your purpose is never more being carried through, and then you may lose your residence permit. So this is the downside, one of the downsides of this scenario. So what now I'm doing, coming to the changing between those two ways. So can we mix them? Of course we can, and that is, but you have to take the following into account. We have on the right-hand side the green, and on the left hand the asylum procedure. On the right-hand side the students and researchers programs. So once you have, for instance, failed to carry through your studies, you are exmatriculated from your university, for instance, the worst case. Then, or your contract with the research institution has ceased. Then you can go over to the asylum procedure as a threatened scholar. Then you can say, I can't return, I can't be deported back to my home country because I am persecuted there. And then you can come up with all the reasons we mentioned before. This is a possible way. One thing and question that arises in this context is, how does that affect your relationship with the university? Once you apply for asylum, does that affect the situation as a researcher? Given that your legal status also, in any case is in danger because there is no chance of extending, there is no danger in relation to your status, and I don't see any reasons why an institution or a university shall exclude you because you have applied for an asylum. So I don't see reasons there. The other way around, to go from an asylum process into these kinds of resident permits under 16 or 20, as I mentioned before, is not possible. The reason for that is the law is very strict in changing to another residence purpose rather than the asylum reason purpose, so-called. And I can explain this by that. The asylum law is a very effective sword in the hand of a person who is here illegally. So once you are here illegally and you face deportation back to your home country, and once you have applied for asylum, you cannot be deported because of the Geneva Convention and all these kinds of European law. So this brings you very much in an advantage situation. And on the other hand, has the law decided that all the people who make use of this very successful instrument of being here because he or she claims that he is being persecuted, that all these people are exempt from any other residence permit for the time being in their asylum process. And that is the reason why there is no way back within but I'm speaking only of the time when the asylum procedure is going on. Once you have been recognized, once you have gotten your refugee status, your refugee passport, then of course you could move back to the green side, but you don't need that anymore because the status as a refugee is much more comfortable than the student status because there is no limitation, you don't have to qualify, you don't have to fulfill all the points that you have to fulfill when you do your research project. This is of course the advantage. The only disadvantage is, and that prevents many people from Syria or Turkey to apply for asylum, that they see we don't have the chance to get back to our home country, even if we are sure that we are not being persecuted, just voluntarily, because a passport is not valid for this travel, and the status as a refugee is automatically away when you apply when you return to your home country. So these are the two ways, and now I'm happy to deal with your questions. And there's one question, and there's the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Brigitte Jaksha, and I'm representing Södertörn University in Sweden. My question is, isn't it risky to go from having a stay as a researcher, qualifying as a scholar, and having a residence permit in that way, to then apply for asylum in the first version?
Yes. Okay.
Because then if your asylum application is turned down, then you might face a very hard situation.
Yes. Yes, as I said, there is no way back. Yeah? Once you have applied for asylum, there is no way back as long as you are within the procedure or you are rejected. Yeah? The rejection is as worst for this purpose as being stuck in an asylum process. So that means those persons cannot return, and they may face a deportation, and then much depends on do they have papers that they can be deported. We have this tolerance paper, so-called Duldung, which is apply to people who cannot be deported. So there are chances that you stay here. For instance, we have many. I think the numbers of deportations to Afghanistan are less than, for this year, less than 1,000 in comparison of more than 25,000 Afghan people who are going to be deported. So you see there's a great likelihood that you are not being deported, but that is not a status. This is the only chance that you have that we are tolerated here as having a Duldung, because immigration offices cannot manage the deportation. That is the only situation you can't have. This is the risk. That is one risk, that you apply for asylum and you don't get through by that. But we could, of course, think of other risks. For instance, that you break all the ties to your home country. That is one other thing. What is a reason why people don't want to do that?
My name is Gazman Noor, and I'm responsible for Union of Scientists Albert Einstein. There is an organization created only for a refugee academic in Saxonland. My question is not about in the process that you are in process of asylum, but if you get a resident permit, it doesn't matter as an asylum seeker or as a refugee or the other forms that exist in Germany. I heard today in the morning in the floor that there is a new law, I'm not sure, that if you don't have an option to find, for example, a scholarship in Germany, you are allowed to travel and work in French or some of the other country in Europe. But I know this from foreign office that we are allowed just only for 6 months maximum. Is this true that we can, for example, I have a resident from Germany and I don't have any options to apply any university or to win any scholarship here, and I go in other country and turn back in again in Germany?
You mean you're talking about the people who have a residence permit? Yeah? You talk about people who have a residence permit and the possibility of traveling around Europe, or is that the question?
No, the question is the people have now a resident permit in Germany. It doesn't matter what kind of resident permit, refugee or asylum seeker. And I know they are allowed to travel. The question is how long we will stay out of Germany to make research. Today in the morning I heard in the floor from a person from France that she told me that there is a new law inside Europe that you can stay more than 2 years out and you cannot lose your resident permit.
Okay, sorry that I didn't get that in the first place. Yes, of course there is. We have a new law introduced in August 2017, and that is following a European directive, which allows people under 16, the students or researchers, to shift over to another country for a limited time, without going through a major administrative process. So you study in Germany and you want to continue in Pisa, Italy, for instance. Then that is possible under the condition that both universities have a joint program. And the same is true for researchers, that they can shift over to another European country more easily than just to apply through a visa for a residence permit. And the limitations, I don't have them in mind, maybe 6 months. I heard that is more than 6 months, but there is a limited time in which those research travels, longer research travels are possible. Apart from that, everybody who has a residence permit is allowed, of course, to travel freely through the Schengen area, but not to work. Yeah?
Thank you. Good morning. I am Panos Kapotas. I'm a senior lecturer in law at the University of Portsmouth. I'm wondering whether the new German Residence Act, if I'm not mistaken, this is a 2016 or 2017 law. In any case, I'm wondering whether it applies in cases where an asylum seeker has initiated legal proceedings for asylum in Germany and is offered a position in another European university.
Yeah.
We have a situation like that. We had a situation like that with a bursary scheme that we're running with Scholars at Risk back in December, where the refugee scholar that was offered a place in our bursary scheme had applied for asylum in Germany in the summer. There was an administrative delay on our end. The offer only came through in December, and in the space of the next few days, his asylum application in Germany was rejected. He was no longer a lawful resident in Germany. He had 10 days to return to his country of entry, which was, if I'm not mistaken, Croatia, and there was nothing we could do from an admin point of view in the UK at the University of Portsmouth. And I was wondering whether this is a problem with a non-application of this particular new legislation, because I assume that for reasons pertaining to EU law, any sort of offer from a non-German university that meets the requirements of the German Residence Act should count as permitting the asylum seeker to claim lawful residence in Germany.
For asylum seekers, we have to point out that once you are in asylum procedure, no reason counts that is apart from the reason of the situation in your home country. So, yeah? So this is nothing what can be into account in any way. 16. Okay, and you are in 16 and you want to claim for an extension of the time in Germany to study. Is that what you want?
No.
Yeah?
I'm asking whether you think that paragraph 16 could be taken advantage of by universities in other EU member states when the applicant, the refugee scholar who may be offered a position, is in fact residing in
Okay.
Germany at the time.
Okay, the person is outside Germany and he gets an offer at the University of, let's say, Berlin, and then you ask me, is that possible that this person, even if this is an asylum seeker, is going to shift over to Germany to study in Berlin in this case?
The opposite.
Oh, the opposite. For the opposite, I can't tell you anything because I can only guess that that is possible, but we have to go through the visa procedure then. So once you go to France, for instance, you have to go through the visa procedure. If, apart from that, you have to go to look at the French law, because the French law decides on, is it possible to change your purpose afterwards? Yeah, all the questions of coming to France are governed by French law, which I'm not aware of. Thinking of the opposite, I would say it could be possible that a person who is asylum seeker in Italy can come to Germany if he or she has an admission to a university, but then it needs to be carried through a visa procedure. But it's possible, but it can only speak of the German side, not of the other sides. And you mentioned Croatia. Is that true, the case of you? Of what? Of origin? Entry, sorry, of entry, yeah, okay. Then it was probably the Dublin EU regulation that is responsible for her or him being deported to Croatia, yeah. So there was a question here.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to know about a scholar at risk residency problem. Who is, for example, whose residency is valid year by year by a placement through a scholar at risk. So to get the permanent residency, not refugee, not being asylum, she should have a contract for example, 3 years, 4 years. But by a scholar at risk placement is always maximum 2 years by 2 years. And what's happening for this kind of scholar at risk to have a permanent residency who doesn't want or don't have any, yeah, it's better for her because of the security reason, don't be asylum or asylum seeker or don't be a refugee.
So I'm not sure if I got this question as well very correctly, but you're
Because
asking for
it's
an unlimited for a permanent residence.
Sorry?
You are asking for a unlimited residence.
Yeah.
And
not in the frame of refugee.
yes,
But
and the
through
conditions
a
for
scholar
that.
at risk. Yeah.
How to get an unlimited permit as a student or as a researcher.
As a researcher.
As a researcher.
Yeah.
Yes. There is a benefit for those people who have qualified in Germany. So once you have a university degree from a German university, you have the benefit that you only have 2 years to work until you get an unlimited statement. For all the others, you have to stay here 5 years. So that is the threshold, or the number of time you have, of years you have to stay until you get this kind of a unlimited residence permit. And it's also open to researchers as well. And this is a German regulation, but once you have the 5 years fulfilled, you fall under under another European directive, which allows you to move over to any other European country under the condition that you can you secure your livelihood there. This is the free movement of third countries' citizens within the European Union after 5 years. Once you have...
There is no condition to have, for example, after these 5 years, there is no condition to have a contract for...
No.
No?
Once you have this kind of a paper, the document, the residence permit, then there's no restriction or any rule as to having papers or not. If you don't have the paper, if you don't have the residence permit, let's say you are here 5 years and 3 months, you don't have that, and you lose your job, it might be a problem to get the unlimited statement. But once you have the permit and you lose your job, then it's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah?
One last question. Thank you. My name is Elisabeth Bundemeyer from Hamburg University, and I have a question regarding the asylum process and whether there's a possibility for a host university to employ someone while he or she is still in the procedure, and another question, what are the options to support the procedure from a host university perspective? Thank you.
Okay, the question was, is it possible that, how does the hosting institution can manage the case that some researcher is in an asylum process and want to work? And are there limitations? There are no limitations with respect to working for asylum seekers. I'm not talking about people from such so-called safe countries, but upon 3 months of time after applying for asylum, you are free to work, and there is no limitation. You need the consent of the immigration office, which is usually given, because if there are not particular reasons that lie in the person, like a criminal record or things like that, if that is not the case, you have good chances, or then the immigration office will issue the permit for work. And how can an institution affect in a way the asylum procedure? There is, of course, not, but what they can, there are limited ways, but what they can do, and I know that from my practice, sometimes if a scholar has a history in his home country, and we have to establish that towards the Bundesamt, towards the federal office, it might be helpful that the German institutions who had, and that is important, had previously worked with him or her during the time she was in her home country or he was in his home country, that she can give evidence of the situation. This could be helpful. Or what I have had is that some researcher had come to Germany previously, two or 3 years ago, and visited people, other researchers in Germany, and talked about the situation, that those people could give evidence about the situation in the home country. That is the only way I see. As I said previously, the asylum procedure is not asking for the qualifications of somebody. The asylum procedure only faces the question, is this person persecuted or not? Yeah, there are no further questions. I thank you for your attention, and goodbye.